This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
Good morning. One of our favorite workshops of the budget season is upon us. But before we get to that one,
Oh, wow. Tough crowd.
Is the fire department back here?
no. Alex, would you like to take us through your request?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. We'll be going through the 2023 IT budget. We'll start with just our maintenance contracts, which are increasing slightly due to some increases from a couple of vendors, mostly Microsoft and VMware. Some of the prices for their ongoing maintenances are going up. Our hardware, software, and contractor line remains unchanged. Tuition line remains unchanged. Munis also remains unchanged. So then we're going to go into our capital request.
Yeah, before we move off that, is this a subscription? Is it a contract that we have for multiple years?
It's not for multiple years. They usually do it year to year.
Yeah.
They don't even give you the option of, as I've asked, if we could get a reduced rate if we signed for multiple years.
Strictly support, right?
It is.
And
It's SaaS because it's hosted out of their data center in Maine. We're paying a subscription more or less for them, and we add a little bit because we need training, and especially this year because both the town and Board of Ed are going to the new version. Our employees will need some additional training on using the new version of Munis.
Before we move on to capital, I just have a quick question. Do we have any input, Mr. Frieda or Mr. Monaco, about the very first line, the personnel full-time? I know normally Mr. Swinkowski would fill that in, and I'm just wondering, do we have those numbers? I didn't really.
There's no change in staffing, so it'll probably be just contractual obligation, which is probably around the 2% range. I don't think anyone.
Is that what you're asking, Nancy?
That's what I'm asking, is whether that first line item will change substantially, either due to,
Nope, no added personnel.
either
just
added personnel
standard
or
raise.
renegotiated contracts or whatever the case may be.
Well, it eventually will change to, let's say, 2.5% increase, but that's already booked in contractual obligations in another line item of the budget. So that may go up next year based on just raises, so.
Right, but for the next fiscal year, that would be covered by contractual replacement, or contractual obligations. But the actual number might increase by 2.5%.
Yes.
I'd say so, yes.
Yeah, she's asking because that number was omitted from that line
Yeah, I understand.
on our worksheet.
I understand.
That's why.
Okay.
Yes.
Capital?
Thank you. So, I think I was talking about this analogy earlier with Rich, where we've moved into the house of the IT department. We've looked at the plumbing. We've replaced we've replaced some old plumbing with PACs. We've looked at some other things, and we're getting to the point where some things have really aged out, and they need to be replaced. And our employees are having poor performance because of some of these things. So, do we spend all of that up front? I don't believe we really have to anymore. A lot of companies are giving you, pay it over 5 years, own the equipment, kind of programs. So, in order to keep our capital requests kind of flat for the next 5 years, we're looking at replacing a large chunk of what hosts the town servers, and will improve our performance for the town and for public safety. So we're requesting $45,000 for our data center lease over the next 5 years. Some $10,000 for initial software licensing for those new servers, And then what we didn't have in the past was a desktop replacement program in the town where we have computers aging out, and instead of coming here and asking for a big chunk all at once, we want to develop a plan to replace the oldest computers on a yearly basis, and kind of get into that cadence, so we're not sitting on old hardware for 8 years and then asking for a huge chunk to replace everything all at once. And we believe that, you know, by developing this plan, it keeps those costs kind of flat, and then it'll also give us the performance everyone's looking for, and it'll also keep our technology fresh and not have to have obsolete desktops and locations in town.
So how old are the oldest desktop computers?
Probably 5 to 7 years old.
So what platform is it? Windows?
They're all Windows.
What?
Everything's been upgraded to Windows 10, just because of security reasons. But are those computers, yeah, they're maybe 4th generation Intel processors.
Oh, yeah, so they're really slow.
Yeah.
Al, what is the total number of computers you're going to be replacing?
So I'm requesting 15,000. That will probably, you know, get us. I want to get around 20 desktop replacements. We're now replacing monitors.
Is that total?
Yeah. So we'll yearly. So we'll
20 yearly. What is the total number all throughout?
all throughout town.
Yes.
Probably close to 150.
So have you entertained a multi-year contract with the?
I haven't looked at that
Price
specifically for those, and we can certainly look at that.
Now, whether you're locking into a price that you know is going to be
Yeah.
rolling over every year. Something to entertain.
Okay.
Sorry, I just have a clarification question. The figures you just cited, do they relate to the $80,000 across-the-board figure in the 5-year capital improvement plan? Or are they related to the hardware-software line within your regular budget?
No, these are that $80,000 figure.
So it's all part of that? It's not, you're not changing that figure?
No, I'm not. In fact, I'm under it. I would try and stay.
Yeah.
Figure 70 in the plan, Mike.
Is
Well,
it
it's 70 this year, but
70.
it's 80 in the future years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Anything else for Alex?
So I'm seeing actually 60 for information technology for capital for this year, and 126,703 for the previous year. Is that what you see?
That was 60 for previous year?
For 21, 22 is 60.
Correct.
And then actual for 2021 was about $127,000. So is that related
That doesn't-
to, not the capital, 5-year capital improvement, I'm just looking at, our actual capital page, in which we have actual for 2021 and budgeted for the current fiscal year, 21-22. And so I'm just wondering, of those two numbers, how does that fit into these 3 categories that you're mentioning? Obviously not data center lease, but software and desktop replacement. Do those numbers relate to those? I think that's what Mr. Hallahan was alluding to.
Alex may not have at his fingertips his current budget's breakdown,
Right.
so.
So have we been replacing desktop units in the last 2 years? Let's say it that way.
No.
Not at all?
No.
Across town? Okay. And one other quick question that I had.
As needed,
Sorry.
maybe a couple of emergency replacements, but nothing,
Phone systems, for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
But nothing major like.
But not desktops.
Yeah.
Okay. And one other question, only because it's been posed to me, is there anything being done about the Wi-Fi specifically within the rec center? And I know that this has been brought to my attention because there are several meeting rooms
Yeah.
within the rec center, and the Wi-Fi is really spotty.
We lost an access point in the gym, and it's being replaced.
Okay. Do we have a time frame on when that might be? Approved?
Typically it's within a couple days. It's a warranty replacement. so
Okay.
I believe it was already submitted for RMA last week.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for addressing that. Appreciate it.
Everyone else is good? Thank you, Alan.
No, wait,
Oh,
the last question, and this may be for our temporary finance director, Mr. Frieda. Any ARPA funds, can they be utilized for IT, for those for the computer?
Again, I think that's a question to deal
Well,
with when
but-
we're in processing, when we start to work on the budget.
But I'll be more than happy to answer it. We're applying for it. I don't know if we're going to get it, okay? So I don't know if it's going to get approved.
Yeah, but it's one of those categories that seems as though it might be covered.
It's possible.
Right. There is a cybersecurity improvement in the data center with our backups, so it should. But yeah,
Again, that's more for probably our March meeting than anything else,
Thank you.
when we get some feedback. Thank you, Alex.
you're welcome.
As soon as you leave, Patrick can step up.
Thanks, Alex. Talk to you Monday, okay? Thank you.
I need this. This. Oops, turn this on.
Hello, how are you?
Nice chat.
I'll put the presentation up.
Hey, what, Fox? It's getting chilly. Maybe ask Mike to turn it up. Mike, can you turn it up just a little bit?
I did, so it takes a while to get cranked up.
This one.
Yeah, it's the other side. I figure it was just. All right. Alex,
I'll check it now, Jim, I'll check it now, okay?
Haven, North Haven Secure? Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I think I got the.
Your mics are on, by the way.
There it is. This it?
Yeah, if you're gonna give a code number, it'd be nice not to be on. Can you put us in pause for a second?
Is that in all caps?
Up this time. We are back. Even though I said it was my favorite, some people said it wasn't their favorite. But I'd like to welcome you to the Board of Finance. If you'd like to take us through your requests, since you are a significant part of our budget.
Thank you, Mr. Monaco. Good morning, North Haven Board of Finance members. Today I will be presenting the Board of Education's budget recommendation for the 22-23 school year. To start, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Board of Education for their support of this year's budget, as well as thank Melinda McKenna, our Assistant Superintendent, all principals, directors, content area coordinators, central office staff, and student services personnel who were involved in the process of preparing this year's Board of Education budget for consideration by the members of the North Haven Board of Finance. A special thank you to the board's Director of Finance, Operation, and Human Resources, Howard Wardlow, who has streamlined the preparation process and made adjustments within the budget to allow for increased transparency, as well as increased everyone's overall understanding of the BOE's recommendation. So this year, there's little change to the overall budget at all levels and within all departments. The far majority of increases are a result of contractual obligations and cost of benefits. Within this year's budget, there is a proposal to add 3 full-time positions. Howard and I will elaborate further on those positions, as well as highlight areas that have significantly increased or decreased, and the reasons for these changes throughout the presentation. In addition, there is a proposal to add 2 new athletic teams at the high school, a girls rugby team and a wrestling team. The district directors and building principals responsibly created their budgets for the 22-23 school year. Howard and I spent time with each of them to review, revise, and reduce wherever possible, while still ensuring that we are meeting all obligations and staying true to the district mission. As we all know, special education is the most unpredictable and fluid area of the budget because it's dependent on the needs of students. This being said, I'm very appreciative of the Board of Education because they chose to create a special education reserve fund last year, which assisted us in offsetting any unforeseen costs that could arise. I'm pleased to report that we have not needed to utilize this reserve to this point. The budgeting process is one of the most important tasks the district and the Board of Education take on to reach the objectives within our mission statement. The NHPS mission statement is as follows. It is the mission of the North Haven Public Schools, in collaboration with students, parents, and community, to develop responsible, educated, and productive global citizens who can thrive in an ever-changing world. A vision statement focuses on tomorrow and the expectations the Board of Education has for all students. As a result of their experiences in North Haven Public Schools, every student will acquire the skills necessary to meet the demands of the 21st century. The Board of Education recently approved a vision of a graduate at December's board meeting. The VOG reflects the skills and dispositions expected of our students and will be the foundation of all work within the district. It is also an important component to the budgeting planning process. It provides direction, priorities, and frames how the district will utilize the allocated funds. So in pursuing the mission and vision, we believe we must provide opportunities for all students to independently, collaboratively, and creatively solve rigorous everyday problems, honor and value empathy and compassion for all individuals throughout our diverse community, support students in making strong and positive contributions to their community, and provide all students with a safe learning environment to explore their strengths and vulnerabilities to develop self-worth and support each other in times of challenge. As we focus on the budgeting process, my responsibility is to collaborate with the district leaders to design a fiscally responsible budget that ensures equitable and developmentally appropriate educational experiences between schools, safe and clean learning environments, fulfillment of statutory obligations, and continue to advance the Board of Education goals. And as part of this responsibility, we are incredibly sensitive to both the broad educational needs of our students and the resources we are expending to address those needs. In creating this budget recommendation, we were committed to maintaining these priorities. Maintain the district's focus on improving achievement for all students, adjust instructional needs associated with the recovery from COVID-19, meet all contractual obligations, ensure designated services provided through ESSER funds are absorbed by the general operating budget, and address the social and emotional needs of all learners by beginning to increase the level of support services within our schools and district programs. So the proposed budget recommendation provides the following: resources to 3,160 students, mental health, nutrition, and medical care to allow students to access instruction, specialized services required for all students to meet their potential, diverse opportunities for students to engage in activities outside of their curricular pursuits, and transportation to and from school. So there are many internal and external factors that drive the budget each year. Internally, student enrollment, contractual increases such as salaries, vendor contracts, including transportation, special education, and medical benefits all play a part. Student enrollment has rebounded to be consistent with the few years prior to the pandemic. And the district has responsibly negotiated contracts for teachers, administrators, paraprofessionals and clerical, and nurses this past year. In addition to board members taking part of the contract negotiations, a representative from the Board of Finance also took part in this process for certified staff. In a few months, we will begin negotiations for the custodial contract. And as always, we continue to review vendor contracts, especially around student services, to find potential savings. Externally, the state of the state and federal education revenue, and state and federal mandates always come into play. Overall, the state has been rather quiet in regards to mandates. We are very grateful for the additional federal funding that has been provided to the district. Howard has been diligent in keeping the application updated, as well as ensuring that we are adhering to the goals that were established for the utilization of these funds. This slide reflects North Haven's per pupil expenditure in relation to our Durgd, which is District Reference Group D. We currently rank 15th out of 24 Durgd D districts. This is 3 places lower as compared to the 18-19 ranking. However, North Haven continues to be in the middle of the pack within our Durgd.
They do a Durgd number that nets out the state support?
I don't believe so.
No?
It could be out there. There's a lot of numbers that are out there. I just haven't seen that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's state supported or not. So.
What's that, Durgd? What is that?
It's a district reference group. It's based on socioeconomic.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
District reference group.
District
reference group. It's based on socioeconomics of each town, and they group us together so we can kind of compare districts of like, not necessarily size, but just socioeconomic status.
Right. There's still a decent amount of variability in terms of the types of towns and municipalities that are included in the DRG, but we don't really have a choice in who we're compared to.
I see.
Yeah.
And especially in Durgd D, we are quite, I think we are the most diverse Durgd overall. So,
Yeah.
as far
Quick
as-
question related to the DRG. Do you have some reference point for percentage budget increase relative to the others in the DRG?
So
On an annual basis.
One of the groups I belong to is CASBO, which is the Business Officers Group, and so right now that data is being compiled. Right now it hasn't been. Matter of fact, I looked at it to hopefully bring to this meeting, but there was only us and one other town that had a reference point in there for Durgd D at this point in time. Because again, it's voluntarily put into that, right? It's not. I put our 2.9% request in there because they have multiple categories in which they gather this data. So hopefully I can provide that to you once it becomes fully.
So that's for the proposed year. Do you have it for historically?
I can get that for you.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Terrific. Thank you.
So the average per pupil expenditure for Durgd D is $19,132. North Haven spends $396 less per student per year than this average. For comparison purposes, North Haven is $2,997 from the lowest PPE in Durgd D and $5,539 from the top spending district. So the approved 21-22 Board of Education budget was $58,470,730. The Board of Education's proposed budget for the 22-23 school year is $60,166,330. This requested increase for the 22-23 school year is $1,695,600. This reflects a 2.9% increase. This increase will meet our contractual obligations, healthcare benefits, and increases in facilities and educational equipment and software. Included in this increase is an effort to move 3 positions into the general operating budget. These positions were established this school year through the utilization of ESSER 3 funds. The goal from the onset was to move these positions into the operating budget so that they are sustainable for future years. We are able to move these positions for the upcoming budget year while still keeping a 2.9% increase. We believe it is imperative to keep these positions in place as they directly and positively impact our students, as well as allow us to meet the needs of all types of learners within the district. I will now turn over the next few slides to Howard, and he will provide an overview to address the major budget drivers.
Thank you. Good morning. This slide provides the board a visual of how the expenditures by category are broken out and the portion they comprise of the total budget. As you can see, the 5 largest categories, salaries, benefits, transportation, other purchased services, and special education tuition, are all non-discretionary spending and make up roughly 92% of the total budget. If you add utilities in as additional non-discretionary spending, it pushes the total to over 94% of the budget. The only change year over year from this slide from last year is that other purchased services and special ed tuition exchange places in the order. Are there any questions regarding this slide? We'll continue on.
No, finish your presentation. We'll ask questions at one point,
Thank
please.
you. This slide, the following chart breaks out the budget expenditures by category, the percent of the total budget, their dollars, and the percent of the total change for year over year. The key takeaways from this slide are as follows. The additional investment that the town is being asked to make in the educational system is being made in 3 key areas that directly impact the students. Salaries and benefits, which is 73%, other purchased services, which is 19%, which is special education services primarily, and educational supplies, which is 10% of the budget. These 3 key areas are what directly impact the success of the students of North Haven, and therefore it is our recommendation that they be allocated the largest portion of the increased investment. The following chart breaks down the expenditures by discretionary versus non-discretionary spending. As you can see, non-discretionary spending, of which salaries, benefits, and transportation are included, makes up 95.9% of the budget. This chart simply shows that the largest portion of the budget is expenses that must be paid at the agreed-upon rates, which generally speaking are in the 3+% range, and in some cases significantly higher.
Thank you, Howard. So as I stated earlier in the presentation, 3 new positions are included in this recommendation, in addition to adding a girls rugby team and a wrestling team at North Haven High School. So a school counselor at North Haven High School was created to allow for additional mental health and college and career planning. It also lessens the caseload of our students for each counselor. A K-5 SRBI coordinator, SRBI stands for Scientific Research-Based Interventions, a coordinator at that for all 4 elementary schools was added to allow the district to unify and improve our intervention services across all our buildings. And the 3rd position is an English learner teacher, or an EL teacher, which allows the district to meet the increased enrollment of students who receive English language services. And as you can see, the number of students in this area has significantly increased over the past 4 years.
How many students are assigned to one counselor? You're
So-
asking for an addition.
So we already have that, that's already in place, that counselor. We are funding it through the ESSER 3. We're just asking to bring it over to the general operating budget this year. So it's not a new position per se.
I see, okay.
But to answer your question, I believe we're around the 200 per counselor, maybe a little less with the addition.
I see. And this other position will be floating from school to school, is that the idea?
Correct. Our heaviest population of EL learners is at Green Acre School at this time. So we have 3 EL teachers currently, and they're divided up amongst the 6 schools.
And a quick question, Patrick, you mentioned the counselor. So you've recently had a retirement, I believe, of one of your counselors at the high school, correct? And so...
A resignation.
A resignation, sorry. So is this the replacement for that, or it's an addition to?
In addition to.
So it's an additional position.
So this position that is being presented today is already in place. We want to move it over to the operating.
So the replacement for the person that retired is currently being funded by the operational budget.
Correct.
And the additional position is being funded by ARPA, and you want to move that over to the operational?
Yes.
Got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we just go back 1 second? I missed what the SRBI was.
Sure. So SRBI stands for Scientific Research-Based Intervention. Education, I think, has a patent out on the number of acronyms that we have in our field. But SRBI, for students who need to close their learning gap, if they're behind in some areas, we provide tiered services at all levels. But this coordinator is helping us unify all our practices across the 4 schools. And the 6 months it's been this person has been in place has greatly helped us, especially in recovering from COVID-19 and the interrupted learning from last year.
And haven't you always had a coordinator for K through 5 for language arts and math?
Correct.
And so you're adding another area of expertise that is science. Okay.
Well, it's not science.
Yeah.
It's scientific research-based. It's an intervention coordinator. So for students who need
Oh,
additional
okay, so it's
support,
not science as a topic as
No.
much as,
It's more intervention to provide additional support, so all of our supports look the same across the schools.
I see.
It's more of a data analyst position. There's a lot of data that's collected and it's analyzed to see which students need the additional help, is my understanding.
In addition to
In addition to the
coaching
Right.
of our interventionists, providing them professional development to ensure that they're
I see.
providing the best type of support.
So we already have interventionalists,
We do.
and we already have coordinators for those interventionalists, correct?
Not
No.
for those, this K-5 is.
Not through K through 5.
This K-5 SRBI coordinator is for the interventionists. We've never had a position like that before. This is a new
Okay, because
position.
I thought we had coordinators.
We do. They're for specific content areas such as English language arts, math, science, social studies.
I see. So, got it.
And for approximately $40,000, the girls' rugby team and wrestling team was added to this year's proposal. And of that $40,000, $8,500 of it represents a one-time cost for the wrestling team to purchase equipment such as those large mats they need for that team. So in close,
Is that based on demand, or is that some sort of Title IX requirement?
based on interest. And wrestling is co-ed too, so.
And I think Paul Ciccarella came forward and
He did. He
made a
presented
pitch
to
for
the board.
for the boys' wrestling team,
He
right?
did, yeah.
So,
And then the girls' rugby team has been a club sport for, I'd say, 6 years or so now. So the board would like to take that and begin funding it as a team.
Is there a boys rugby team?
There's not.
Just to interject for a minute, I support those any athletic endeavors that the town does. You've seen our students seem, especially ours, through the years, they are more focused and more disciplined in their time during their season. They learn a lot about budgeting their time, budgeting the resources they have available. So it does add a lot to their academic.
Yeah, it's a big responsibility.
Yeah.
Have a team
So-
commitment to a team.
I love the idea of adding it.
So, probably like 4 years ago, with the athletics for the girls, uniforms were like a mishmash of uniforms from years ago. Sorry. A few years ago, maybe like 4 years ago, the girls' athletics had uniforms, some were new, some were old, they weren't consistent. So since we're on that topic, has that been figured out, like that they were either all new or there was a lack of them and that was an issue?
Are you talking new and old within one team or new?
Yes, within one team.
Okay. So uniforms are purchased on I believe, a 3-year cycle. And especially now with the change in mascot, we've updated this year alone quite a few uniforms, both girls and boys. But they've always been on a 3-year cycle. And I believe that, and I could verify with Steve, that the varsity uniforms get purchased, and they do believe the old ones sometimes go down to the JV or the freshman team if needed, so they cycle through in that
That
manner.
was the big thing where the girls felt like, well, team honestly had all the uniforms all consistent and the girls didn't. So I'm just asking about
No.
the cost was not, which is great. Athletics is great for
Oh,
these
yeah.
kids. It's totally great, but that was a big talk among the girls, like, oh, well, we all have different uniforms. Some were really old, some were really new, and it was just.
Our cycle applies for the boys and the girls, they should be on the same cycle.
Staying on that vein, is there a uniform for the band? I'm only asking this because when they march down the street on Memorial Day, they look like vagabonds. And there's no conformity, there's no uniformity. And
That's
I would
something I'd
think
have to
that
look
they
into,
should
their
really be
uniforms.
dressed appropriately. Might be something to entertain, something to look into.
Yeah, I would think that they had
The high
t-shirts or
school and
polos or
middle school
something
have
along those lines.
t-shirts.
No, they have T-shirts now?
They have t-shirts, because my daughter was in, she had to wear a t-shirt.
That's a start.
And I don't know if, I don't believe that is board funded. I think that might be something that the parents purchase. So that's something.
I recall years ago, we had a music professor, Michael Horn, and he instilled that one year that he was teaching in North Haven, that when they had Memorial Day, he made sure that all the men wore black slacks, white shirts. I mean, it did look presentable. It really, and then I don't know what happened, but it just went backwards.
Something we can definitely look at.
Yeah, just food for thought.
Get Patrick.
All right, just got one more slide left. So in closing, North Haven is known for its commitment to education and the community's support of the Board of Education's annual operating budget. Again, I look forward to our collective work as we continue to deliver an exceptional education to the children and families of North Haven. Thank you all for listening to our presentation, and really thank you all for what you do for the North Haven community.
All right, thank you, Patrick. First thing that just jumps out at me, I mean, you lost $654K with ESSER2, and you're moving those 3 positions. All this federal money that we've gotten in the last year and a half or so, can we not utilize that for some of the items in your budget, especially positions that are,
So
we're being funded already in ESSER?
we 100% could, but we're going to sit here next year and present you with the same positions.
We don't mind you presenting it next year.
Okay, but again, there's no guarantee that it can be 2.9% when we come to you next year. This year, we are putting those 3 positions in and still keeping it under 3%.
All right, but the capability of funding it through that,
We have another year.
all right, so can you give us an
But-
idea in the next few weeks as to what funds you have received
So, and if we are,
and the caveats associated with them and how they may be used to supplement certain aspects of your budget? And we'll kind of make the determination, I think, if we think, at this point in time, again, we can discuss it in detail as a board, and we'll discuss it with the first selectman.
a lot of what we have planned for the next upcoming years, 1+ years, 1.5 years.
Yep.
We have after-school programming for intervention for students, both summer program, a spring program, and a fall program that we have. I think we just started our boost group, and we have about 180 students participating at the elementary level alone. So if we are going to not fund these positions this year through the general operating budget, they're going to take away from some of these opportunities we're presenting to students after school, some intervention support. So that was our priority this year, to get these in so we can continue providing services for our
Understood,
students.
understood.
See, that's the same as the fire department phasing in their personnel year in and year out to try to even things out in the long run in terms of
Yes, we're,
long-term planning.
again, this is, yeah, we discussed it.
Well, you brought it up.
I just asked if there was something. You've taken it further. We can discuss it further. I just want to know what the options are on the table.
Yeah, but I'm
Tim, you-
defending his timing on the
Oh, you can-
presentation.
well,
of the-
I just don't want to
was-
fall off a cliff in next year.
And I
That's our
understand,
biggest
and
concern.
we can debate that in our meeting. This is informational. I'm just trying to gain more information, Michael. Tim, you had something you wanted to say?
Well, I just think we should be more specific. I think the first question should be is, can you tell us what the cost, not now, but later on when you get a chance, what the cost of the 3 positions are, so we can look at it that way, right?
Yeah, it's about $700,000.
Yeah, I mean, per
Oh, per person. If you could break it per person, yes.
And then,
So,
I guess.
Give us a shopping list.
Okay.
Right, and then I think, and by the way, I think you should prioritize them for us. And I think,
I'm going to be unable to do that. All 3 are imperative.
I don't mind,
That's fine.
I don't need the prioritization. I just need the
think-
cost.
I think the other question which flows out of your request, Rich, is, we've got the list of the grants here in the document we got from the Board of Ed, including the ESSER 2 and 3 monies, and I guess the question is, well, how much of that has been spent and/or is budgeted to be spent both this year and next year?
Technically,
So-
all of it. Technically, all by the application that we had to apply, the $2,041,000 has been allocated all the way out. I can give you documents
Yeah.
on that. I can also give you the $947,000, that's ESSER2.
Right.
That's already, by the application of what we had to break it out by line item, that's already been technically spent for
Okay.
lack of a better term.
Right.
And it's by each of these line items that we had to do the application, when we did the application. So can we adjust the application if you make changes? Yes, we can, but the point being that this allocation, case in point, there are 5 elementary school teachers who were put in for 2 years in ESSER 3. So we're carrying them for 2 years because we want it, so that those funds are there. We're going to carry them again next year.
Well, I
right,
guess that
in
sort of
ESSER
gets to
3.
my question, which is the dollars that you applied for and received that are reflected in these numbers, are they for positions that are currently, in the budget wouldn't be the right term, but are they for new programs that we put in place when we got the dollars, or is it to fund, I think you just mentioned perhaps some teacher positions? I think it would be helpful to know, because what you're saying here is that you've got 3 positions that are being paid for by, I think, ESSER 2, that you want to roll into the budget because you're trying to smooth out the expenses, right? So is that the full extent, or do you have other positions in the E2 or E3 monies that may fall into the same categories when we have this conversation next year, or perhaps even the year after?
At this point, there are no other positions we'll be bringing to your attention.
Okay.
Those 5 teachers were designed for just the span of the ESSER money. We wanted to lower class sizes at the elementary level.
A little bubble, picking up a bubble.
Yep. And our goal over 2 years, we anticipate there'll be some attrition in to keep these people on board through retirements and resignations. So
Yeah.
we don't plan on losing these folks that we have. But those 5 positions will not be brought and asked to bring into the general operating budget.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that information, because that clears up a lot of what we would end up asking you anyway. My general question regarding the ESSER funds is, aside from those, say, 3 positions that you're asking us to add to our operating budget this year, the ESSER monies, are those for any other programs or expenses that you want, that need to be continued after the COVID learning phase is over?
So one of the big programs that is being funded currently by ESSER this year, 300, well, not completely. There's Apex is a third-party vendor for special education services, and they provide what they provide is technical staff that help with the with special education students, RBTs. I forget that terminology is.
Registered behavior technicians.
Thank you.
And as well as BCBAs, which are board certified behavior analysts.
So currently within the budget, we had budget in the operating budget. It costs $800,000 for that program. $500,000 of it is in the special education line in the budget. $300,000 is being funded by ESSER this year. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring that slowly as a bridge, using ESSER as a bridge to bring that totally into the operating budget. And so next year.
I like the way you're doing it.
Right, it's over 3 years is what we had planned it out. We plan to use 300,000, 150 in the 22-23 budget, and then 75 in the following budget, and then the following year, the 4th year, it would be fully ingraced into the budget.
That's very good. I'd like to renew Howard's contract, please.
He doesn't work for us. He works for him.
There is also some correlation with the Apex. So the students that Apex is helping support are students that might not be successful within our district, and they might have to be outplaced at other schools, which is a significant cost to the district. So having, let's say $800,000 to help support these students, some of these outplacements cost $100,000 per student. And we have roughly, just for numbers' sake, in 2018-19, we had 33 students who were outplaced in schools outside of our district. We have brought that number down, projected for next year, to 23 students, which is a significant savings to the town and to the board. So.
Staying along the same field, is there anything else you want to, is there any other big numbers like that 300K for Apex that you want to?
Continuing on, no. A lot of
Anything else jump out at you?
the items that we are, I mean, I can go through that.
Yeah,
I have the list here. I don't know if you
little
wanna-
dollar items, I don't
Yeah,
care.
no. Like
Is there any significant dollar item?
I don't see anything that's in the intervention programs that Mr. Stirk mentioned. Those are big dollars over multiple periods, right? Because we're doing fall intervention, spring intervention, summer.
Okay.
So those are over multiple years. That's That's, again, that's not being brought into the budget, right? That's being utilized, utilizing ESSER funds to
Yes.
run those programs. So again, going back to your question, if we take a look at taking those positions and saying, nah, let's put them back into ESSER, there's got to be a, there's got to be a.
I understood that. But those positions you're just talking, those intervention programs right now, we're not carrying anything in our budget. You're doing it 100% off budget.
Correct. Yes, sir,
Okay.
correct.
I just, if there was anything that jumped out, just to give us a little feel for,
Well, one of the other things too is we have a Chromebook lease supplement. And so what that did was, when we looked at to redo all our Chromebooks, the cost, there was an additional cost there because prices went up, because of chip shortage, because of everything going on with that. So what we did is we have, portion of that is in the budget, but $33,000 over 3 years for that lease is being funded by ESSER funds, because that's the difference, that the additional cost of those Chromebooks and when we lease them.
okay.
We intentionally, and thanks to Howard, designed the use of the ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 to make sure that we're not going to face that cliff next year, so.
I actually am impressed with the way you've done it and you thought it through. I don't have any objection to that. I just need that little bit of a shopping list because we may sometimes have to do something you might not have liked. Maybe there's a position that we need to shift for whatever reason. Maybe we don't. But we just need the ability to evaluate it correctly.
You need options.
Need my options.
Understood.
Tim, do you have anything else?
Yeah. Do we still have any rollover money?
No.
We used to have Board of Ed rollover money, right?
The 2%, the unexpended funds, was 466,000, I think it was. No, that was moved at the end of not 21, prior year, was moved into reserve funds for medical reserves.
Right. Does Munis generate a balance sheet for the Board of Ed?
It does not,
No?
because we don't have a balance sheet for the Board of Ed. Technically, at least I can find, I can't see one that balances, so that's the problem right now, so. I'm working on a lot of things, I'm trying to get things cleaned up. That's not something I've attacked yet.
Just comment on the self-insurance fund?
Yes.
Can you comment on the self-insurance?
Oh, I'm sorry, so just on it, I was like, is that okay. The self-insurance fund, in the sense, we have 1.9 million in reserves sitting on the town's books technically, because all reserves are held there. It's Fund 692. And that's at 91% funded at the mid-rate, based on an actuarial study that I had done at the end of last year, of where our reserves should be.
That's good.
We're in good shape.
Yes.
It'd be nice if the town had that funded to the same level for medical expenses. But we're working on it, right? We are working on it, I like that.
So that's the basis for this 0.8% increase?
Correct. That was, the
It's
actual
because of the-
requirement was about a $250,000 higher in the medical line, that should have been higher, and that's where I was able to reduce that because of the reserve that we had put in place.
If we're talking medical, can I ask a question?
Good.
I just want to know, currently, if Brown & Brown, and by the way, you're still sathesatisfied with Brown & Brown as
Yes, very much so.
an operation? Because when they come before us, we love their communication skills, and their perceived consultation services seem to be excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being self-insured, obviously our contributions and payments have to be in line with current and future claims and expenses. How do they, are they being tracked, how are they tracking right now?
So claims are coming in at about a little over $700,000 a month, and we are funding at about $700,000 a month. So it's claims and our contributions, plus, well, our contribution plus the employee contribution, right? Portion of it are running about even.
Great, that was my question.
One thing, your capital items, you didn't mention, you didn't touch on capital at all.
We did that. Do you want to give a little summary on that?
Sure.
Unless you just don't want anything.
No.
Yep,
So.
that's fine.
Capital fund, it's minimal for 22, 23. We just have a few items according to our facilities manager that are required. Nothing big there. There's sidewalk replacements, carpets, things like that. Again, if we're looking out, the big items are the roofs for the elementary schools. Those are about $1.3 to $1.5 million per elementary school. And so we have laid those out going forward. And if you recall from prior years, we continue to lay those out going forward. I think one of the discussions we have to have, and Patrick and I have started this discussion internally to ourselves, is those buildings are very old. They're from the 60s, the 50s and 60s, 40s. So they're very old buildings, and at some point, we're gonna have to talk about renovating or replacing. So the question then becomes, is it worth putting $1.3 million into a building that we're gonna have to soon replace or renovate? I just want to bring that up because I think that's a topic that has to be brought up, and the planning process should start. Patrick and I intend to start discussing it in detail this summer. So it's just something I want to bring before the Board of Finance.
And it appears that Mount Louise is your first one you have budgeted, so that's the one in the worst shape, I assume?
Yes. According to our facilities manager who we've spoken to, they can still be repaired and carried forward. But again, I think the bigger topic needs.
No, it's Ridge. It's actually Ridge.
Ridge?
Ridge Road, yeah, Ridge is first, I'm sorry.
It's first.
Have you thought about
sorry.
consolidation?
So we're gonna look at a study, we're gonna bring some people in to look at enrollment study, population and whatnot, moving forward to see if that's something
Because a long
feasible.
time ago, we had Temple, and then that was absorbed. And some of the elementary schools have more property than others. I know
Yeah.
Mount Louise was expanded many years ago with a wing, so I'm just wondering
Ridge
if
as well.
consolidation would be something that you would also look at.
We would look at all
I
options.
think, yeah, all options have to be on the table.
Well, I'll let everyone ask. I just want to make some comments, but I'll defer to the other Board of
Diane?
Finance members if you have any questions.
Any questions, other questions?
Yeah, what was it, the other purchase services, that went up. Can we get into some details? What is actually in there?
So primarily, that's the Apex, other purchase services is Apex, which we are bringing in, we're bringing in the funds. That's again, moving the 150,000, the money in that this year is what we're trying to do, is trying to, again, we're taking more on the operating budget, less on ESSER. So that was the biggest piece of that.
I think it was the custodial. Did that have to do with cleaning?
So custodial went up. Custodial is an interesting one in the sense that last year, when we had to get to the 2% budget, we had to find savings some places, right? And so what we were able to do is we were able to pre-buy with some extra funds that we had at the end of last year. We were able to pre-buy for this year custodial.
Okay.
Custodial supplies. So generally speaking, on an average year, they spend between $100,000 and $105,000 per year on custodial supplies. Last year, we took it down to 66, utilizing that pre-buy process. This year, we don't have those funds anymore, so we have to bring it back up to the 100,000. So that's the large increase in that line item.
Okay. Repairs, is that to a specific school? I noticed that.
It's in general. It's just in general.
Just in general
Yeah.
to have that there?
Some of your sidewalks are in bad shape.
Yeah,
I would really like to use, if possible, dress them in the springtime, at least.
that's always been an issue.
Yeah.
High school was one of them. All right, I'll let other members go.
Jim?
On that custodial supplies, the cleaning services, don't they, do they supply their own cleaning supplies?
Yes.
Or why are we also supplying?
For our custodians they have other cleanings. The cleaning, they're general, right? The cleaning service is just general. They have the machines, they have their supplies to clean the floors and things like that, but the custodians still have to have supplies. And they have to clean the bathrooms, they have to do all that kind of stuff too during the day, so it's an ongoing, so that we have supplies as well.
There's paid staff that does a certain amount of cleaning, then there's outside
Right, that
cleaning
does the larger.
services as well.
I see. All right. I had, the transportation. You went down on your regular transportation by 14%, and I'd like to know how that was accomplished, and secondly,
Special ed
can
went up.
that decrease be applied to other areas of transportation?
So what I did was, when I did the analysis this year for transportation, I reallocated based on bus type, right? Currently we have 22 what are called the big buses. And then we have 26 of the vans, and we have 4 short buses. And so what I did was I took the 4 short buses, and I took the 26 vans, and I put those into the sped category based on their cost. And they left at 22. So what you're seeing there is a reallocation between the two lines, between sped, transportation, and most of the vans, I'm not going to get down into the detail of which van goes for regular, which van goes here. I just put the vans into sped. It was just an easier way to do it, is put van into sped, put the short buses into sped, and put the long buses into, and so it's just a reallocation of the costs across those two categories. It's nothing more than that. There's no real savings per se. It's an increase overall in transportation.
So to piggyback on that, have you noticed that because of COVID, more students were driven to school?
Yes.
And has that impacted at all, or it's
So,
kind of leveled
you-
out, or?
Well, that doesn't impact the bus routes that are being driven. What impacts the bus routes being driven is the shortage of drivers, because we're combining buses, right? So now if you're only running one bus for 2 routes, you may have a little bit of overtime because the bus driver has to take a longer route, but at the end of the day, you're only running one bus. So we will see savings there. I won't know what that is until the end of the year because I can see
Right,
it.
no, okay, that's fair.
In
And
addition,
are we in this,
I'm sorry.
are we in the second or third year of the bus contract? I can't remember.
It's the second year.
Second year.
It was first year is when I first got here. So
Because I know a lot of people talk about when they're picking up between the middle school and high school and how that's a mess over there, so I assume that there was a lot of people that, the kids that were getting picked up and dropped off. And I was just wondering the impact on that.
It's leveled out a little bit this year compared to
Yeah.
last.
Jim, you good?
No, I have one more, a couple things. You have full-time non-certified and part-time non-certified. Okay, and I understand the difference is the non-certified are not, they're not degreed?
They don't have state certification.
Okay. So, the part-time non-certified went down 31%, and the full-time went up 22%. What exactly do they do? And how were you able to do away with the part-time and increase?
Okay, so full-time non-certified are primarily the paraprofessionals that work with our students directly. What we had to do is, we actually had, if you look at that line, it went up so much, and you'll see, and if you're looking at my reports on a monthly basis, you'll see that that number is actually over budgeted, and you'll see it in this month's report if you haven't seen it already, because of the fact that we had to hire 10 additional paraprofessionals for students' needs, right, that were not budgeted for in last year's budget. So what you'll see is that number is increasing this year in the current year's budget, and had to increase next year because of the fact that all these paraprofessionals have to stay on. So what paraprofessionals do, they work with the students within the classroom, one-on-one, two-on-one, there could be 3, but they're in the
provide
classroom.
academic support.
They provide academic support. The part-time non-certified, what you're seeing a reduction there is a reduction in the cost of bus monitors. I talked to the bus company, they said we could have between 10 and 20 bus monitors at any given point, any year. They just don't know until they get that year, till we see what we need. So what I've done is I've allocated, we were allocating for something like 20-something. So what I've done is I've dropped it to 15 because we only had 10 this year. But again, we had 10 this year, which was short of what we needed because we also have, you also see in the overtime line in this year's, but if you're looking at this, I'm talking current year,
Yes.
you'll see the overtime line going up because we have paraprofessionals, the full-time people working overtime, riding the vans and stuff as bus monitors. Just to clarify too, ESSER is going to allow us to recoup those funds if we can do it, if we have excess funds there. So I'm going to try and work that a little bit money there too. So that'll play into your questions there. But bottom line is I reduced the number of required monitors, which is making up the bulk of that savings, the 31% savings that you're seeing.
But you just got, you're saying you're taking the certified and making them monitors. So where's the savings?
Non-certified.
No, for next, the non-certified.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay,
The non-certified is where I cut in next year's budget.
Yes.
This year, I'm talking 2 budgets, right, so I apologize if I'm confusing, but I'm trying to show that there's increased costs this year that I'm planning for next year too, but not as much as we had in the budget. So that's where I found savings, because we didn't need as many bus monitors.
Okay.
And just to piggyback on that, are the non-certified paraprofessionals involved in doing assessments? Because I know you made a special point of saying that we can use ARPA funds to reimburse some of our costs associated with student assessments. So I'm just wondering to what extent can they be utilized and have some of those costs of the paraprofessionals also covered currently?
Student assessments.
I think you mentioned that somewhere in your narrative.
So paraprofessionals are under the direction of a special education teacher, the general education teacher, and they just provide support to students. They are not leading assessments or.
So they're not leading any
projects.
assessments?
No.
Okay, that's my question.
The Board of Ed administrators, I noticed on your sheet that they were all 2.25% to 2.5%, and one of them fell, 4.5%. Is that a new hire? Yeah, what-
Yes, that's the new the assistant principal at the high school, the 12-month assistant principal at the high school left, and we brought in a new 11-month assistant principal, so. And
That's
the one who
okay.
was 11-month moved up to 12 months, so there's a savings there.
Yeah. And lastly, in your capital, you put in for a lawnmower. I thought the town took care of all their maintenance, lawn services.
The Board of Ed has outside vendors that do the football field as an example. The town, I'm not sure if the town does.
So we mow our own.
You
No,
know,
the Board of Ed has their own crew that does all the grounds for the schools, and we don't do
Yeah,
that.
I
There are
think,
a few
Jim, I think what you might be thinking, a lot of the fields in town that they do, we might associate as if they were Board of Ed fields, they're really not.
Like Rock Road
Town
Field and
fields,
Montauk,
yeah.
the town.
Like Montauk is a perfect example, yeah, Montauk Field, the town does it. But, you know, it's,
But everything that's not that field, the Board of Ed mows and tends to.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, I'm all set. Thank you, guys.
Nancy? Oh, I'm sorry, Diane?
Question, because a lot of people have asked me this, it's not totally directed to this, but, so with the snow days, you know, we had to do the virtual thing, it took a while, we got it working, and I think it's a state thing from what I know, but a lot of people have asked, when there is a snow day, why aren't we doing virtual, so we're not like,
The state of Connecticut is not
it's
allowing
the
us.
state, it is a state issue.
They took it out of our hands.
Okay, because a lot of people have asked that question, so anybody watching will now know the answer, because I get asked that a lot. Okay, thank you.
Nancy?
Yeah, I just wanted to provide a little bit of a big picture context for this BOE budget proposal before I get into some real specific detailed questions. So in 2019 and 20, the Board of Finance granted the Board of Education a 2.9% increase, which translates to about $1.5 million. And you ended that year with about an $850,000 surplus. And about $557,000 of that we transferred into your carryover fund, and about $282,000 into the capital improvement fund. In the subsequent year, 2020, 2021, so that's the last fiscal year, the Board of Finance granted you a very large 5% increase, which translated into a $2.7 million increase to your Board of Ed budget. And you ended that fiscal year with a little bit over $1 million surplus. And that was transferred into 3 special reserve funds, in addition to the $400,000 carryover fund that you mentioned before. And those 3 special reserve funds were for medical and dental, special educational, and capital improvement. And in the current fiscal year, so last May, the town voted at a referendum to grant the Board of Education a 2% increase, which translated into a $1.1 million increase to your budget. And again, we have no idea how this year is going to end, but according to Howard, everything looks really good. No major red flags. So I guess collectively speaking, I'm just saying that if you just look at the previous 2 years plus the current year, collectively that represents a $6.7 million allocation to the Board of Education. 2.9 plus 2.7 plus 1.1. And on top of that, the Board of Education also received $3.5 million collectively in ESSER 1, 2, and 3, plus an additional $350,000 in Corona Relief Fund. So knowing that some of the ARPA funds can in fact be used for operational expenses. I know this was a big question at the budget, both the public hearing as well as the town meeting, but in fact, that ARPA funds can be used for operational expenses for the Board of Education. I guess I'm just a little bit surprised, as Mr. Monaco and many of my colleagues are, at the request for a 2.9% increase, or $1.7 million this year, and cracking the $60 million level. So, and I'm concerned on 2 levels. One, the use of ARPA funds should reduce some of the operational expenses. And also, I have some concerns. We talked about the 3 positions, but I have some concerns about this budget setting an artificially high baseline for future when we don't have these federal funds. I've said the same thing to Mr. Frieda about our town side.
Nancy, I appreciate what you're saying, but again, you're debating their budget almost instead of,
No, I'm providing a context. That's the point.
if there's something they presented you don't understand, fine. If you want to talk and ask them specifically
So,
about
that's my
how
next
the
step.
ARPA money is not being used or being used, that's something as well, fine. But talking about 2 and 3 years
Well,
back.
you said the exact same thing.
Yeah, no, I didn't talk about several years
Your introductory comment was you're a
back.
little bit surprised.
I
at
didn't
them
talk
coming-
about stuff from 3 years ago.
I understand,
So
but
focus
sometimes
on their
historical context is
presentation is
very
all I'm
important.
saying.
And I'm sure everyone listening at home is appreciating this context. So let me just go into my specific questions. So within this documentation that you provided, as well as the slides that were presented, just as a clarification, Patrick, the number of students is currently 3160 or 3120? Because in a booklet it says 3120.
So, just as February 1st came out, I looked at the total enrollment and it was at 3160.
Okay, so our booklet says 3120, I assume that's as of October 1st of this fiscal year. Okay, so, and I noticed that the in-district numbers have gone up, but the out-of-district student enrollment has gone down. Is there some connection between that? Have you brought some of the out-of-district students in district, I guess is my question.
We have some of the students who are in specialized schools we've been able to program for them and they've returned to the school.
Okay, and on your slide, you said that the special education tuition decreased by 15%, but in our booklet here, it says it's decreased by 8.8%. So which is it?
I'm sorry.
SPED decreased by 15.
SPED tuition in particular. On your slide, it said a decrease of 15%, but in our booklets here, it said a
He
decrease.
may have included transportation as part of that overall.
Well, I'll let Howard answer that.
Yep, you take a look at it.
No, correct. 15%, yeah.
Sped tuition, okay, I'd have to see what's under sped tuition, the sped tuition category.
It may include transportation
May
as well.
include, it may include sped transportation, so that may be a
When you do it for a
mislabel.
lot of years, you know where to look.
So,
I'm sure you did it with transportation.
Yeah, so it's under the page called budget drivers. If you look at that. it
no, I
said-
understand, I have to
Yeah,
look in the
we put it-
detail, yeah.
Yeah, but in your, okay, presentation. Okay,
Right, the numbers are the same. It's 2,536,000 and the change is 246, right? But you got a 15% drop.
Yeah, then the percentage is
The
incorrect.
math is just
The
wrong.
math is
math
just
is
wrong.
wrong.
It's 8.8, it's 8.8.
Okay, so it's not 15.
That's the math, the
Right.
15%. I
Got
apologize
it.
for that.
Okay, thank you very much. And then a couple of other questions. Again, in terms of looking at the BOE administrators, it's a little bit confusing if you compare year to year, because of course, last year you took one of the assistant principals from the high school and moved her to being the principal, was it Clintonville?
Monowese.
Monowese, sorry. But as a result, there was a bit of a confusion in terms of the presentation of administrators last year, in which that was presented as a 0 at the end of the year. And then this year, it seems as though you only have 3 high school assistant principals, is that correct?
That is correct.
And the individual that was then working at Clintonville, is that somehow reflected? I guess if you end with a 0, you can't start with a positive number in the next year. So that's the difficulty.
Last year, the 12-month assistant principal at the high school covered for the year a maternity leave at Monowese School. She remained in that position this year. The principal at Monowese has moved into the 12-month role at the high school, so it should be in theory a wash this year for those positions. Actually, I take that back. There's a difference in salary between the 12-month assistant principal at the high school and the elementary principal position, so there should be a difference in those two salaries there.
Yeah, it just struck me, whenever I see a 0 in any line item, and then you look at the next year and it doesn't begin with a 0, it seems like last year's differential is compressed, and then this year's differential is compressed because you're not starting with a 0. Is that clear?
I'm with you.
Okay, all right, so if we could just get some clarification as to how all the puzzle pieces moved around, that would be helpful. But going forward, you're going to stick with only 3 assistant principals at the high school, is that
Yes,
correct?
and that's always been the case since I've been here.
Okay, because in the previous year, it was 4.
There's always been 3, one on
always
every
been
floor.
Well, you had one that was temporary, I guess that's what I'm saying.
There was still 3. We did have a temporary one, but there were not 4 assistant principals at the high school. There was a teacher that was brought up to serve as an interim assistant principal last year.
Yeah, so temporary, so that's a 4.
Right, but no, because there was replacing the principal, the assistant principal that went to Monteluce to cover for that leave. So there was only 3.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
there's a lot of pieces moving there.
There's a lot of moving parts, and I can certainly show you what is here in front of me that has 4 assistant principals, and one of them is temporary, so that's what confused me. But, okay, and then my question is, again, we're talking about all kinds of capital improvements and other types of improvements to the various school systems. Howard, do you have a sense for how much of the $2 million security bond has actually been spent on the schools for the security?
Right now, it's at 1.77 million.
Meaning spent?
Spent.
Spent, not encumbered.
It's spent, well, I consider encumbrance, that's an accrual basically, so I consider that spent.
Okay. And is there some way that we could get some sort of an itemization of what that involved?
That's on the town's books, that's not on my books.
Okay, all right,
It's-
yeah.
It's
I don't
Fund
know how we're gonna get that.
415, I believe.
Okay. Let's see, and then,
And Nancy, may I interrupt you really quickly?
Sure, of course.
Regarding the security bond
Yes.
project, our IT director, Jen Kozniewski, has also recently applied for a reimbursement on that security bond project, and she just got word, it looks like we should be receiving, I think, around $250,000
Yeah.
in reimbursement. Not guaranteed yet, but it looks pretty good.
right, okay, terrific. And again, in terms of the $1 million that was transferred into the special reserve fund, since I don't have the most recent update from the town, obviously, we've been using the medical and dental quite a bit, flows in and it flows out with matching from employees, but as far as the special ed reserve, has any of that money been used this year?
And can I clarify on that one point?
Yes,
Just one point
of
on
course.
on that $1 million, because I know we talked about this at the
Yes.
meeting that you came to. So just to clarify, and we're talking about 4 different reserve funds on the books of the town that 3 that belong to the Board of Ed, so to speak. The town, the one that you're talking about, the 2%, the unexpended funds that we utilized for the $557,000 at the end of, not last year, prior year. That fund, that 2% fund, again, it allows the Board of Ed to utilize up to 2% of its budget if there's excess funds there, and take them and approve them to be put into that fund. It's a special fund, it's I want to say, I forget the number that's on the town books, but it's on the town books as its own fund. If the Board of Ed chooses to put the money into that fund, that is when the Board of Ed has to approve it, and the Board of Finance has to approve it. That's the only time that happens in that case. Last year, we did not move that $1 million into that fund. Last year, the Board of Ed chose to take the funds that they had on their budget and allocate them to the SPED reserve, which they had approved in a prior meeting, they set above. They had approved that. The capital fund had already been approved, right? So that was already set up, and then the medical reserves. So those 3 funds where they moved the extra funds that had been budgeted and they moved them were moved into those reserve funds. They didn't go into that other fund first and then move like we did the prior year. They simply went directly to that.
No, I
So
understand.
theoretically speaking, if we're talking semantics here, there wasn't a surplus of a little over $1 million. It was only $7,000 surplus.
Yeah, you made it very clear that there was a surplus, because again, if you didn't spend any of that money that year, then it's a surplus. You simply moved, in the same way that any of us move money from our savings account to our checking account. That's not spending it, that's simply moving it, right?
That's
So if
saying,
you
correct.
don't spend
It's
it,
not the
then
same.
it's a
It's not the
surplus.
same.
That
Not
is-
the same.
It's semantics.
Nancy, stay on the budget, please.
Yeah,
He's bringing it up.
well, you brought it first.
He's bringing it up, so that's
Okay.
why
I
I'm
think
answering
it's
that
a clear
particular
explanation, but I think
question.
we all understand what happened, how you characterize it.
I just wanted to clarify
is
that.
a
Yeah.
different- is a
Don't-
different topic.
Sorry.
And the Board of Education never voted on that particular transfer, nor did we vote on that transfer, nor did the town
Well,
meeting.
We don't have-
vote on it. I don't
we
know
don't
what
have
the Board of Ed-
jurisdiction
we
over
definitely
it.
don't have to vote on it.
We have to vote on the carryover.
Only if it
We
goes into
didn't
the
get
2%.
carried over, you just explained it.
I understand that, but you're saying that we don't have to vote. We have to vote in order to carry over surplus funds from their budget into the
They're not
carryover special
surplus
reserve.
funds.
Carried over, you just explained that.
We're a workshop for the Board of Ed's budget. Let's stay focused on their current budget and their current request, please.
Okay. And I think I'm with my colleague Jim in questioning not only, you know, the purchasing of new lawnmowers, but there's an electrician's truck that was requested in capital improvement. How does that work for the Board of Education?
We have
an electrician on staff.
on staff.
It's next year.
Right.
And the truck, I believe, is either from 2000 or 2001. It has over 200,000 miles in it. And it's breaking down. So we felt we needed to upgrade it this year.
And so we pay for that truck as well as that person as a full-time person?
He's a full-time person, yes.
Full-time, okay.
And he comes as a saving as opposed to contracting out for electrician services.
And we were able to utilize some of the surplus funds that we're getting from the federal government for free lunches in order to purchase that other truck. Is there any way that we could do the same thing with this truck?
No.
We wish.
Okay.
We can't. The answer is no, we can't, because the surplus funds didn't come. They are specific to the cafeteria fund. So we can only utilize those for cafeteria-related expenses, which
Got
is a
it.
delivery truck for the cafeteria service. That's why we can utilize those
We're also
funds.
purchasing a new refrigerator.
New fridges, yes, we're looking at a freezer
Refrigerators.
for.
I
one of
did
the
see that in
schools.
capital improvements, okay. And likewise, I would love to be able to see, you know, some sort of a breakdown, because in the past, we've seen sort of with forward-thinking, future tense, this is what we plan to do with ESSER 1, 2, and 3. I would love to be able to see, this is what we did do, and most importantly, this is the outcome. So one of the questions that I had was, you know, there was so much talk about spending the $1 million in ESSER 2 funds on summer programs, and I think you had, Mr. Shirk, you had mentioned something about, you know, the possibility of 400 students. So the question is, how many students actually participated in summer school programs last 2021?
I have to
I
look
guess
at
to be
that.
clear, I don't think it's our role to measure outcomes. I think it's an appropriate question to ask if it's financially related, but I just want to make it clear, I don't think it's our role to measure how well they educate the kids. That's the Board of Ed's role, right? So I just ask, if that's a financial question, by all means, in fact, I think we should have a breakdown of how the ESSER 1 and 2 monies, where they're going, Nancy. I think we should have that.
Which we said earlier.
Right.
We'll provide that.
We've said that at the
Right.
beginning of the discussion with them.
So I guess my question is, I'm assuming that the vast majority of the expenses associated with running a summer program is staffing, right?
Correct.
So the return on the taxpayers' money is how many students actually participated in those particular events. So that's, I think, a reasonable question.
But you say taxpayers' money, it came directly from ESSER 3, all of the summer school programming.
Right, so fine, our federal tax dollars, okay, let's put it that way. So the question is, what benefit did our town derive, let's say it that way, in terms of these particular funds being used in these particular ways?
So to provide services outside of the school day is something that we have not been able to offer in North Haven. So to have a full intervention and enrichment summer program provided a great service to our town, our students. I think, I don't have the exact number on enrollment, but it was highly attended, and it was the parents who attended both the intervention and the enrichment programs were very pleased with how the program was run and what the students came away from in an effort to either build upon their knowledge in enrichment type programs or to close some gaps in their learning in the intervention. So.
And the goal of ESSER 2 was to close those gaps, and the goal of ESSER 3 or ARPA is moving forward. Do you think that we've attained that?
So I don't think is ESSER 2 and ESSER 3, we kind of blend them together as moving forward and closing gaps, and I think we are taking great strides in getting back to some normalcy after after this pandemic. And these programs are truly helping us do that.
And are there still students who are able to remote learn currently?
There are still students able to remote learn, yes. They have to fall under 3 criteria. A student who is identified in special education or with a 504, and it's part of their accommodation, or it's part of their accommodations. A student who is currently quarantined due to, or quarantined or isolated due to COVID-19, or a student who is cohabitating with a family member who may be immunocompromised. There's extensive documentation provided. The state of Connecticut has been very tight on this. They want students in school, so those requirements to be remote learning are very tight for us.
So do you have a percentage of how many of the 3,000 students are currently remote learning?
So it varies from day to day simply because of the students who are in isolation and quarantine.
Sure, understood.
And because the positivity rate was at 22 and is now under 7, that number has greatly dropped in students who are temporarily remote learning, but students who are utilizing remote learning due to a 504, due to an IEP, or cohabitating with an immunocompromised family member, I would say I might be able to count them on one hand.
Okay, great. And I know there was a lot of talk about bringing OT and PT in-house last year, but I see that that line item is going up by $28,000. Are you adding an additional person?
We are not adding an additional person, no.
So why is that going up by $28,000, I guess is my question.
I believe we are contracting out for additional services.
Ah, so whatever we have is not enough. I see. So that's okay. So I wasn't sure whether professional services includes both in-house.
No, I believe the
So
salaries.
that's exclusively, because that would be considered full-time personnel, right?
Right, if we were hiring someone else, that would be in a different line.
Right. So this is exclusively external. Okay. And then, again, piggybacking on what Jim had asked, in terms of repairs and maintenance, and then you have this other line item called other repairs. And the other repairs is much bigger than repairs and maintenance. This is on, I guess, page 2 of your UE proposed budget. I'm just wondering, first of all, why are there 2 different categories, and why is there such a substantial amount of money here? It's over $300,000.
You got it?
Do you have a,
I can tell you the numbers, 4,300 and 4,302.
thank you.
Sorry.
I think it's 430Z, I think is what it is.
Oh, is it a Z? Sorry, yeah.
I guess that must be 430. Oh, I guess.
430Z
Yes.
and
Other
430,
I
repairs.
think that must be an O.
letter O,
Yeah.
yes.
Just, it's per facilities, but I'd have to talk to the facilities manager to understand the detail between the two.
Okay, yeah, it just struck me as odd that you have 2 different categories. And then lastly, again, as Jim mentioned, in terms of the, we have cleaning services and then custodial supplies. I'm just wondering, again, if our cleaning services are increasing by 12%, why are our custodial supplies increasing by 50%?
So I explained that was the 50% is because we pre-bought, right? That's the 100,000, 66,000 to the 100,000, correct? That
yes.
just explained before? That's the custodial supplies. The reason that the the cleaning services are increasing is because there's 2 minimum wage increases that happen in next budget year. And so their cleaning services that we're purchasing from them are primarily services related to people coming in and cleaning the building. So you're seeing a $1 increase, I believe it's this June or July, and then you're seeing another one next June. So so I think it's July and June, so what you're seeing is $2 increase in wages for the cleaning services, so they have to increase their cost to us.
Yeah, but that's over 2 different fiscal years,
No,
right?
it's not, it's July and June of the next year. So July this year is a $1 increase.
Yep.
And then June of next year is a $1 increase, so there's a period there's a 1 month, it's only a month for $1, but there's 11 months of a $1 increase, and then there's another $1 increase, so it's $2 within 1 month.
For 1 month,
For
yeah,
1 month.
at the very end, right, okay. And then my last question is related to the athletic equipment increase of 167%, or $14,000. Is any of that as a result of the change in the mascot?
For athletic equipment. I don't know if uniforms.
No,
fall
because,
under that.
so we,
Other than that,
uniforms
we
and
wouldn't.
athletic equipment that had anything to do with the change in the mascot, we assigned ESSER funds, $35,000, and we were able to utilize.
That's what I assumed,
We
right.
utilized that, and so all of that has to do with it. Primarily, my understanding from the athletic department is that that has to do with athletic equipment, the new athletic equipment to do for the two new, the wrestling and the.
I think 8,500 of it is.
Yeah,
due to
8,500 of
wrestling
it's the wrestling mats.
Oh, the mats.
The mats are in there, so that's part of it. So, but it's, again, it's equipment related to those two programs, because there's one time and then there's ongoing, right? You're always gonna need new equipment.
Right, I'm just thinking about the equipment for both wrestling and rugby, and it seems pretty minimal.
The mats are
other
the
than
biggest piece of
mats.
8,500, yeah.
Maybe a couple of rugby balls.
Yeah, and then there's,
Okay.
and then there's always I know there's a large cost always for the refurbishing of the football equipment, the helmets, because they have to, for safety reasons, they have to refurbish those every year.
Right.
Helmets in rugby too, right? You must have, you must be buying helmets.
Helmets
for
in,
rugby.
No, there's no helmets in rugby.
They don't wear soft helmets?
some,
I don't think
I
so.
don't know if they do.
I don't believe so. Tough girls.
I don't believe it.
Okay, so I think those are all the questions. Other than, I appreciate the examples that you gave for the excess cost grant. Just a quick question related to that. No matter what the reimbursement is from the state, the amount that the town approves for that particular line item, which of course is a net line item, that's fixed, correct? So that will be assured to the Board of Education no matter what happens at the state and federal level in terms of budget surpluses or deficits, correct?
You lost me on that one, because
Yeah.
if a new student comes in, that line number changes. I don't understand the.
No, I'm just saying from the standpoint of the town's budget supporting the Board of Education. The reimbursement piece is the reimbursement piece, but the other piece that we are assuring you as part of your Board of Education budget is fixed.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying. Yes?
I'm not sure of the question.
Yeah, you're
No,
talking, right, you're talking about,
you have-
you're talking about ECS,
You
right?
have a line item,
ACS, yeah,
whatever it is.
yeah.
For tuition,
And
2.5 million.
we,
Right.
Apex, perfect example.
Okay.
We're funding, the town's funding 500,000 of it, Esther's funding 300,000 or vice
This
versa, whatever.
No, that's currently.
And that's what she's saying, no matter what, even if the state was funding something and they didn't give it to you, you still have what the town has put in your operational budget.
Correct, so so the net number that you see there is the number that again, that's the number you're gonna fund, but that could change, right? Because if a new student comes in and we have to, for whatever reason, moves into town. Or leaves, right? That number is flexible. That's part of the problem with sped spending, is because it's so variable based on the student's needs that we can never say that that's a fixed number. What I can tell you is that I can look at the students, and again, this is where the ECS comes in, is I can look at who the students are. I know what their current cost is, and I can actually try and calculate what my return, what the state is gonna give me back based on a 70% return. Last year, we got a little more, right? You don't know what that's also a variable number. So
Right.
to say that number is fixed,
Right. Well, we
the
do
only-
the exact same
the only
thing with
number fixed
Mercenary
is what
on
we
the town
give you.
side.
correct, you're
Right.
gonna give me
I
2.5
think
million.
you're mixing
based
up
on
the
this line.
income and the expense at the moment.
Right, so the 2.5 million is our best estimate of what costs are gonna be for the students that we currently have in the system. Right, if the students remain fixed, then that number should remain fixed. Does that make sense?
So the expenditure could be
Should.
variable,
Right.
but it's your best guess.
It's the best estimate of
But
what
the
that,
funding from the town is assured.
if you give us the full budget, yes.
Right. If it's approved.
You
That's
give
my
us the- If
question.
you approve
Yep.
the full budget, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question from board members?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the last 2 pages. The enrollment figures is something we ask for every year. And we can see there's 2 types of change in enrollment. The enrollment of the, well, it's the prior year's graduating class versus the incoming kindergarten class. And I'm not sure we have a graduating number on here, but it looks as though enrollment has stabilized over the last few years. I mean, there were concerns that a declining enrollment did not always justify additional even higher resources to education. But we can see that it's at least steady.
I'd argue it might be growing.
Yeah, well, I see it's up 10% from last year
And I would even
in
take
terms
that,
of kindergarten versus first grade.
and I take that out of the mix last year because there's a lot of families due to the pandemic that kept their students home if they could, especially incoming kindergartners. They can enroll them the next year, so.
Okay. All right, yeah. All right, so that's the enrollment part. Thanks for including that in the report. The bus contract, I think we've spoken about the changes in how you're handling the different types of transportation. Facilities, you spoke about the roofs, so no major risks in terms of an unanticipated facility infrastructure expenses.
Not that I'm-
No, okay, good, good, okay, yeah, we're good on boilers. And the status of the teacher's contract, is this representing the last year of the current contract? It's in the budget for the next year?
No, it's the first year of the new.
First year of the new budget, of the new contract?
Yes, sir.
And has that contract been finalized?
It has been financed.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry if I missed that. I apologize. Thank you. Yeah, I want to go back for a second to the Durgd comparative figures versus other schools. How are they adjusted to reflect the different types of handling of the capital needs of the Board of Ed? Because some towns, I think, do allocate the expenses for all capital, including buildings, to the Board of Ed side of the budget. Now within the paperwork that you submit to the state, is there a way for them to go and sort through those differences in order to come up with a figure that's comparatively meaningful?
No.
So,
I can answer
do we happen to know if other towns have their capital expenditure numbers in there, and that's why they're higher than North Haven?
In their operating budget,
In the Durgd numbers?
in the Durgd numbers?
Yeah, is it possible that
I'd have to
there's some
research.
CapEx
I don't know.
numbers
It's a possibility.
It's a
but
possibility. I don't
We'd
know.
have to dig a little.
Anecdotally, I know from talking to other business managers, their capital is allocated in multiple different ways by different towns. And so you'd have to research each one individually and figure out how they handle it.
I honestly, excuse me.
No,
I don't-
that's a legitimate, if
No,
you're
no,
going to
and
cite
and
those
it-
figures,
and
you
I
have to
don't
know
put-
what they
I don't put
mean.
a lot of weight in your Durgd numbers.
That's fine. That's what
Simply
that's what we
because
use, so.
The town pays a lot on the Board of Ed's infrastructure that I'm sure a lot of other municipalities do not. So I don't take, I understand we're in the middle, that's fine with me. I don't put a lot of weight in this type of a number because this number can easily be skewed by the fact that we're comparing apples and oranges. The Board of Ed has a problem plowing lots in a heavy storm a few years back. Guess what? The town went and did it. Other school systems are probably using outside vendors that they're paying for and as part of their budget. You know, when they need something, especially if it's in a hurry and they don't have it, the town steps in. At the same point, 12, 14 years back, the town was in a little bind for electrician and you sent your electrician to the town. So it does work both ways a little bit, more that we help the Board of Ed than the Board of Ed helps the town. But that's why I don't put a lot of weight in these numbers. I'm comfortable that we're in the middle. If we were a little higher, fine. If we were a little lower, fine, because I really feel that a lot of those numbers are skewed and that they're not all reported the same way. The town does support.
You've got state dollars in there, right? So the
the
best
state
number
dollars skews
would
it
be
too.
to exclude the capital expenditures and the state and see how much the towns themselves are spending, right?
So you can't put a lot of weight in those numbers.
Yes, from your mouth to the state's ears, very good.
You cannot put a lot of weight into what those numbers really mean. Do you have anything else?
I'll know what slides to take out next
Just
year.
want to make sure all the questions are done.
Oh, almost, very good. Now, yeah, I have to differ, though, with something Tim said earlier here, and that's in slight defense of some of Nancy's questions. You know, we ask questions about educational goals and learning, or the effectiveness of current or past programming, because we have to understand the relationship between budget allocation and performance in order to determine whether the stated, whether the agreed upon goals and objectives can be or should be met. And so in past years, I've gone and actually looked at external rating services to determine, how, in a macro sense, are we headed in the right direction? Or should our spending queue up to 3.3% annually? Or should it be down to 2.5? Just to determine if this town has prioritized within total spending that the education portion is adequate or needs adjustment. But this year, well, I'm just saying this year, I have deliberately foregone that because of the complications and issues related to COVID. So, I mean, there's just too many other factors that are in play here in order to really to look at ratings in a concrete manner. So, but that's what I've done before. So,
Okay.
Tim, I happen to disagree that with what the subject matter of some of the questions could or should be here.
You don't feel?
I think almost anything could be on the table, but all right. No, it's all right. So just to finish up here, the monthly reports that you submit to us, I just wanted you to say to know that they're
Appreciated.
They are very good. They're 100% improvement on the past. At times we have some questions or minor complaints, but believe me, they're minor compared to what we've had in the past. So thank you very much, and keep those great communications coming, because anytime that something is out of balance, it's listed on there, and there's an explanation, and we love that. We always, the why question is being answered, so thank you very much for that. I love the special ed reserve account. It's very intelligent to have, and you're meeting your objective there in terms of budgeting, because if you want to budget properly, you shouldn't have to touch it. But again, we've seen years when there's been people moving in and out of town and other unanticipated situations where that reserve fund is definitely a very smart move.
And your question again was?
Nothing. Today's presentation, though, it was excellent and efficient. Just run the same thing next year and you'll be fine. Was it pointed out that there was an inaccuracy on the slide earlier in terms of the change in salary, the salary line on there? Just of all your expenses. No, yeah, that one. The upper right. I think that the change in that is upper right is instead of 67%.
No, what that is, that line is actually showing you what percent the dollar change makes of the entire change. So the 1.131 for salary is 67%.
All right.
So I tried to, it's a little different. It's a little, it's a twist on the loop.
All right.
Sorry, we didn't clarify that.
Okay, percentage change. All
You're
right.
good, Michael?
Thank you very much. Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one quick follow-up question, since the point was made about the fields. And I know that there was a question about naming a field, and you said that you couldn't name the field because it belongs to the town. So does that apply to all fields that are associated with schools or not? I'm just trying to understand.
Out of curiosity, what does it have to do with the budget, though?
It absolutely has to do with the budget. So is the Board of Education responsible for for each of the fields associated with each of the schools? That's the question. Either maintaining or otherwise addressing any of the needs of the fields.
They're responsible for maintaining it, yes.
Okay, so.
I mean, you take the exception, might be Rock Road, and mine, lease that field is a board, a town field, not a board field.
So that particular field is actually maintained by the town. And what about the turf fields? Are they maintained by the town or by the Board of Education?
By the Board of Education.
They are. And so that's sort of my question is, if you have the ability to be making decisions about whether an outside organization can rent your fields, then you should also have some discretion as to, you know, the payment and maintenance of those fields, wouldn't you say?
The board has that discretion.
Okay, so is there anything related to the cost of the turf fields currently that we should be knowing about either this year or in the next coming years?
Anything popped up with turf fields that we need? I mean, normal maintenance at this
Normal
point.
maintenance, yeah, we have the machine that
warranty,
fluffs
the
them up.
fluffer,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's-
I know that there was a problem, you know, as a result of one of the storms, and was that covered by, you know, some sort of
Insurance with
warranty
it.
or insurance?
It's warranty, it's a
Okay.
warranty to this.
And going
Fencing
forward,
and stuff like that too. Yeah.
and has there been money set aside for the replacement of the turf fields, or is that just something that is being discussed?
That is something that's being discussed.
Okay. And just again, in terms of the enrollment, again, you know, I just had some concerns about seeing that the junior class is only 208 students. It's really nice to see that there are increases in the elementary school level, but it seems like there's kind of a trade-off, an increase in total numbers at the high school of 24, but a decrease at the middle school of 24. So that's kind of a wash. So it's nice to see that our younger children are moving into North Haven and coming to the schools. And I think I've asked this question before, but I would love to be able to see, of all of the school-age children in our town, what fraction actually attend our public schools.
I know you've asked that.
I know I've asked it before, and I'm going to
difficult
keep
get that,
asking
yeah.
it, because again, I think you see the trends, right? You see the decrease in enrollment over time, despite, you know, young kids moving into our town. So we are doing some things right, and perhaps we're leaving, you know, some things that are unaddressed.
I don't
So
know
that's
if we're
sort
seeing a
of-
decrease. Maybe there was a decrease in past years and we never caught up to that stage, but we've definitely plateaued, and I think we're growing incrementally.
And I don't know whether it's the, you know, opening of the Slate School or other factors, but it would be interesting to see that particular
We
statistic.
definitely lost enrollment. I mean, the CAFR has like a 10-year, when the CAFR comes out, or they look at the old CAFRs, it's got the enrollment in. We certainly, maybe, it may have plateaued now, but we definitely lost enrollment for years.
And I think that's statewide at that time.
Yeah.
Right.
Mr. Frieda?
Well, thank you. Howard and Patrick, I want to thank you very much for the way you've worked with Ed and I down through the years. And, thank you for the close relationship we've had. Ed always appreciated it. And thank you, Howard, for your assistance since Ed has passed. You've helped me on several things, and I appreciate that very much. So, I just want to say that having the benefit of a statewide perspective in my other roles, you provide us more information than 70% of my colleagues ever get. You provide us more information than over 70% of the Board of Finances across the state of Connecticut are required to get. And the other 30% are part of regional school districts. They get nothing. So I appreciate the information you give to us, so thank you. On the subject of fields, we have a problem right now. Our sports facilities are in decline. The track needs to be resurfaced. We need more seating at the turf fields, and the boys' baseball field and the girls' softball field are in a state of disrepair as it relates to other districts and other cities and towns. So one of the many groups that I'm close with in the town is the sports community. So we're going to be coming forward, I am, with a plan to help improve those facilities. Because the optics of our campus, specifically the high school and middle school, and the quality of education that we're offering, we're getting a lot of people from other cities and towns that want to move in. I know that firsthand because I'm close with all the residential real estate agencies in town. So the optics of our campus and the quality of our education is starting to be undermined by the optics of our sports complex fields. We have, I've got many people in the sports community reach out to me and say, you know, Mr. Frieda, I know you grew up in West Haven, you played sports in West Haven. We go to West Haven, and the sports fields are much better than our facilities, and they're a distressed municipality. So you're going to see me come forward with some sort of presentation on how to improve the optics of the sports facilities. As it relates to the elementary schools, so consider this for me as we continue to work closely together. Ed and I have planned the long term of this town, and now I'm not only managing the short term, but also continuing to manage the long term. that in approximately 4 to 5 fiscal years, the debt service will drop significantly. Right now, the debt service is rising because we're still paying on the police department, we're paying off the firehouses, there's still some debt on the high school, which was completed in 2005, and we're paying on the what's about a net of a $48 million commitment on the town side for the middle school renovation. So the debt service is rising, but it will fall off dramatically. And let's say 5 fiscal years that happens. I anticipate, the rough numbers right now, the debt to drop about 40% in 4.5 to 5 fiscal years. The question is, can the Board of Education hold off by doing some maintenance on some of the elementary schools that are in decline? That would be the time in the future to try to go to the public and see if we could do what you're asking to do and what you suggested earlier. So there's no answer to that now, but that's some perspective, Howard and Patrick, as to the time that could happen. Because what we don't want is what we had years ago in my 3rd year in office, a middle school that was condemned by NEASC. They came in, and I was part of the meetings. We had leaks in the roof, we had contamination, there was asbestos. So we corrected that. So that's something to contemplate. Let's say it's 5 fiscal years from now, from the current fiscal year we're in, not starting in the next fiscal year. That may be a way to do it. So if we can help you improve the sports complexes and the facilities and get those optics up to what we've done with the campus and the quality of education, as everyone knows, I'm on a continuous improvement model here. We're never going to get complacent. We always have to continue to improve. And for this Board of Finance, I think everybody agrees that what Howard and Patrick did here today was not necessarily delay an expense by using some of the dollars. And if people here acknowledge that what they did here was the right thing to do. If we go forward with the 1.7 million, right now I am projecting in the early stages of this game, so to speak, this budget ball game, to use a sports analogy, an increase in revenue on the town side in the next fiscal year from anywhere from 3 million to 3.7 million. And I'll have those numbers as time goes on. That's a rough estimate right now. So if we go with the 1.7 million and we take 3 million as a low number, can we fund the town side at 1.3 without raising taxes? If we go to 3.6 or 7 million, can we then fund the town side with accommodating the Board of Ed at roughly 1.8 to 2 million? And we don't know that yet because we haven't gone through the process of looking at the town side and going through decrements on the town side. So those are more observations and contemplations, and that's it. Thank you.
If I could just comment
Thank you,
on
Michael.
what you had to say, Mike. The last thing that we want is to have a repeat of what we did with the police department, in which we sunk lots and lots of money into fixing their roof and fixing their basements
Right.
and so forth. And then we scrapped all of that and basically gutted it and rebuilt it. So just in terms of timing, we might want to consider the consolidation step first before we go fixing roofs on all of the elementary schools, just as an example. So I would just like to recommend a specific order of things in order to carry out your specific plan. I don't disagree with it at all. I think it makes perfect sense. But also in terms of the track and the facilities within Vanacore Field, again, the taxpayers have already paid for that once through the middle school building bonding process. So that was part of the original plan, and so unfortunately it seems as though we're going to have to pay for it again, either through bonding or through our budgetary process.
Nancy, I take objection to what she said about police. That's a perfect example. There was the roof that was put on the building, the only 2 major things that were done over there was the roof and the basement. The roof was still intact. They put an addition to the building. They didn't redo a roof. And downstairs, where they had to do that abatement to encapsulate the lead, that would have had to been done anyway. There wasn't money lost by doing that. yes, it does not make sense to put a ton of money into roofs if we're replacing a building. But to bring the police department into that discussion was, I think, unwarranted.
Okay. We have
Thank you.
differing opinions on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Howard
Right.
and Patrick.
Thank you, Mr.
We are adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.
Very nice, thank you. I gotta go outside and get warm.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.